What is up, NFL fans? Welcome back to another episode of the NFL Whip Around. I'm Jeff Hartman, joined by Coach Kevin Smith for another weekly edition. We're getting close to the draft, Coach. It is like days away now.
It is, but more importantly, Jeff, did you catch any UFL football over the weekend?
No.
You didn't catch the fever? No.
I cannot. I swear I can't. I don't know why. You are a football junkie, but you drew the line at flag football. So the question is why can you watch the UFL, which is such a substandard product, in my opinion, compared to like flag football? I don't understand the difference.
I mean, it's football, like it's actual football. It's like baseball versus wiffle ball.
That's true.
The way I equate flag football. But
I get it.
You know what I like about the UFL, and I'm going to stop talking about it because I know that you don't want to, but the schemes are interesting. Like it's a little bit of a laboratory for coaches. You get coach like Ted Ginn was coaching the Columbus Aviators, and it's an entry level coaching job for him, and he's getting creative with it. So I like when you're thinking outside the box a little.
Well, and some of the rules that they've implemented have been implemented at the NFL level. And so I think you're seeing like a trial and error there. And then if it's successful, well, maybe we can implement the NFL. I understand there's value in watching. I just don't. I would rather watch just some random golf tournament or whatever. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. Let's get to the topics. Kirk Cousins, since the last time we talked, Kirk Cousins chose his team. He is choosing the Las Vegas Raiders. You had talked about the Las Vegas Raiders as a possible match there for Kirk Cousins, with Mendoza not expected to be the starter in week one. I think they're going to ease him into it, as they probably should. What was your takeaway on the signing first and foremost?
I think it's an excellent spot for him. It reunites him with Clint Kubiak. He had a lot of success with Kubiak when they were together in Minnesota, and gives him the opportunity to play right away. It really, I think the two biggest suitors were the Raiders or the Rams. And in LA, he's going to get a chance to chase the ring, but unless Matthew Stafford gets hurt, he's probably not going to see the field.
Right.
In Vegas, he's got the opportunity to play. And obviously at this point in his career, I think playing time mattered more.
I just think that the Raiders were also willing to pay him. We're going to talk about career earnings in a second with Kirk Cousins. He was going to get $10 million this year, even if he didn't even play. And if he sat on the couch, he would have earned $10 million from the Atlanta Falcons. The Raiders said, basically, we'll give you another 10. It's not going to come until next league year, but still, we're going to give you another 10. I think that there were teams, maybe even like the Steelers, who said, and we're not paying that. Like, we're just not going to pay you $10 million more. And so Kirk Cousins has always gone where the money is. Somehow or another, he always finds the money. I swear I don't get it. But at the same time, I think that's what it came down to as well. He has an opportunity to play some. He doesn't think his career is over. So even if in a small sample size, he plays well for Vegas before they turn it over to Mendoza, he could create himself some more money in the future with another team. What was your thoughts on the amount that he's getting paid?
Well, you're not lying, man. He always seems to find the money.
Yep.
Kirk Cousins, this blew me away when I read this. Kirk Cousins, when you factor in this new deal, is the second highest paid player or the second highest grossing player in NFL history. That's stunning. Stafford is one, Cousins is two. He could give back $100 million and still be set up for life. He's made $341 million in his NFL career. $341 million for Kirk Cousins. Good player. But the second most compensated player in NFL history. I mean, if he's the most overpaid NFL player in NFL history, that A, that's not an exaggeration, and B, he's laughing all the way to the bank with it.
Absolutely. I've always said that athletes in particular, I have a list of financial heroes. Bobby Bonilla will always be at the top of that list. The guy is still getting paid by the New York Mets. It's remarkable. Matt Flynn is on that list for getting paid handsomely by Seattle, and then Russell Wilson comes in. He ends up holding a clipboard for the rest of his career, but he made out like a bandit. Kirk Cousins might be number 2 now. And he could get surpassed by Aaron Rodgers on this list, and Aaron Rodgers could be number 2 eventually, depending on if he signs a contract with Pittsburgh. We'll talk about that here in a second. But the one thing about all these players, so you have Matthew Stafford, Super Bowl champion. Third on the list, I think, was Tom Brady. He's won multiple Super Bowls. Aaron Rodgers is on the list. He's won a Super Bowl, NFL MVP out the wazoo. You can go to Russell Wilson, who I think was 5th on the list. He's won a Super Bowl, probably should have won 2 if they don't make that mistake there at the goal line. Kirk Cousins has won nothing. I mean, nothing. He's won one playoff game, coach. One playoff game.
Yeah.
His agent, I don't know if I was an NFL player, I would find his agency and say, I want you representing me because you're going to get me the best deal. I don't know. I don't even know what to say. It's unfathomable the amount of money this guy has made when you just said it best. You said he's a good quarterback. He's not a great quarterback. He's a good quarterback. He's not your Tom Brady. He's not your Aaron Rodgers in his prime. They were great quarterbacks. I don't think Kirk Cousins has ever been in that category. I don't know. Any final thoughts on Cousins?
Deshaun Watson has 9 wins in Cleveland, and for the $230 million he's being guaranteed. So I don't know what's more absurd: nine regular season wins for $230 million, or one postseason win for $341 million. Either way, those guys have made out pretty well.
Oh my gosh. Makes you want to puke. It makes me want to vomit. It's what it does. Okay. Let's transition to more quarterback talk. Second topic. Pittsburgh is the last team remaining without a quarterback as of this being recorded. With the holiday weekend, we are recording a little bit earlier than normal. The question on the table is, should the Steelers continue to wait on Rodgers, or should they move on and see what they have in someone like Will Howard, second-year player, 6th-round draft pick out of Ohio State in 2025? I think that let's throw out some minutia here that's important for this discussion and debate. A lot of people, Art Rooney, the second team president of the Pittsburgh Steelers, has said he is hopeful to get an answer by the NFL draft. Aaron Rodgers doesn't abide by timeline, deadlines, whatever you ever want to call it. I don't know. Do you think they should wait?
I think that they should stick by their timeline. How do you go into the draft without an answer from Rodgers? This is such a crucial moment for the Steelers because they have to have a sense of urgency about this for 2 reasons. One, the obvious on-field product. The reason that they're waiting on Aaron Rodgers is they believe they've got a championship roster outside of the quarterback position, and that with Rodgers, they're in the mix. Now, are they a championship team? Probably not, but they're in the conversation. You make the playoffs, you never know what happens. And they did that last year with Rodgers, and the roster is arguably going to be better in 2026. The other reason is, what's the plan going forward? Like, you need an answer. Everybody in Pittsburgh has wonderful things to say about Will Howard, but he's a 6th-round draft pick who's never played a meaningful down in the NFL, not even in preseason, because he missed last preseason with an injury. So how do you evaluate Will Howard? You cannot be in limbo. If you're going to say, all right, we're moving on from Rodgers and we're going to evaluate Will Howard, then you really have to be serious about taking a quarterback in this draft. I just don't know how you could possibly operate without an answer from him in the next couple of weeks.
I think that they absolutely wait. I stand by this. I've said it on multiple Steelers podcasts that I do. I think there's a deal done, and it's just like last year. They knew he was coming, but they were like, yeah, Rodgers is doing his thing, and he's out there enjoying his time off in the offseason, and when he's ready, he'll come in. I think there's a good chance that he doesn't want to do a lot of the workouts and OTA stuff, and so he's going to delay it a little bit. I think that Aaron Rodgers will be back. Now, there are some reports that he is going to be wanting more money. Last year, he signed a deal that was roughly about $13 million with incentives. It could have gone to 21. They would have had to win the Super Bowl for that to happen. That's interesting if he is actually going to be requesting more money than he got last year. But I think for me, you hit the nail on the head. They were a 10-win team last year. They won their division. He was injured and missed a game last year when he had that wrist injury. And I do think that really did hurt him in terms of his ability to want to stand in the pocket. He still has the arm talent to make plays. And I agree with you. I think the roster is going to be better. And that's without, future draft picks, which we don't know what are going to happen. We assume they're going to take a wide receiver. I think with Aaron Rodgers, this team is a potential playoff team again. And you want him there. I can't say the same about Will Howard or Mason Rudolph or a draft pick. I think that they're waiting. I think they know. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be the quarterback in 2026. You agree or disagree?
I think he is too. Other than what you said about the workouts, what is the incentive or the advantage of him entering into a behind-the-scenes handshake deal with the Steelers, but not announcing it publicly until whenever? I mean, is that the only benefit? I don't have to, if I'm not technically committed, I don't have to come to OTAs and that kind of stuff.
Maybe. I mean,
Yeah.
he's very much into like how he is perceived and his persona. And so, hey, if I don't want to come to the voluntary workouts that are coming up, like I think next week or the week after, because Mike McCarthy's a new head coach, if he doesn't want to go to those, Mike McCarthy's probably fine with it. There's nothing that he doesn't know already about the offense and what McCarthy wants. Let's wait till those are done, and then I'll come in and I'll sign the deal. And I don't look like a prick who is under contract and not coming to
Right.
the voluntary workouts. Or maybe it is monetary based. Maybe it's financially motivated, where he wants 15 million guaranteed, and the Steelers are trying to massage that number down a little bit and put some incentives. I think that's where we are right now, but that's just my own opinion.
Yeah, that's probably right. If you're Pittsburgh, though, I just feel like, fine, you don't have any good answers at quarterback this year. There really aren't any good answers. It's not a deep draft. The free agent crop wasn't great, unless, wanted to take a swing at Malik Willis. Rodgers is going to be 43 years old. You're limited. And so it's Pittsburgh's job to make sure that they have built the best possible roster that they can build for the next couple of years, so that when you do land that franchise QB, that you can take off and run, and you don't have to now say, oh, now we have our QB, let's build the roster.
All right, so we'll have to keep tabs on that for sure as we see what Aaron Rodgers is going to do. Let's go to our next topic. The friction in Philadelphia just never stops. It never stops. And now it's not about AJ Brown and a potential trade, whether it's to New England. Now it's about, could Jalen Hurts be on the way out? Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, he wrote an article, and I want to first and foremost say that Jeremy Fowler is not, he's not a writer that does a lot of spin stuff, meaning I'm going to hear something and I'm going to spin it in a way that make it really sound egregious to get more clicks. He's about as black and white as they come. Here's what I heard. Here's what they're saying. So when I saw that it was Jeremy Fowler that did this report about there might be some friction between the Eagles and Jalen Hurts, and Hurts might not be the most coachable player. I don't know, coach. Is this something or is this nothing?
I wrote an article for Steel Curtain Network back in February where I said, projecting forward, what should the Steelers do at quarterback? And we kind of had a bigger field of possibility back then. And one of the possibilities I suggested was kick the tires on a Jalen Hurts trade, because you and I have talked about this. I live in the Philly area. I get a lot of Philly news. There has been ongoing issues between Jalen Hurts and the Eagles for several years now. And how much of that is legit versus how much of it is Philly media cycle is hard to know. But it's clearly not kumbaya. It's clearly not a situation where the two sides are on the same page or in lockstep about the offense, about his leadership, about his personality. A lot of it comes down to like, oh, well, his teammates don't like him. Well, do you think all the Patriots liked Tom Brady? No, man. Peyton Manning, who called Mike Vanderjagt that idiot kicker, and who had famous sideline blowups with Jeff Saturday. There's that famous NFL Films clip. Jeff, you shut up and run the plays I call. You got to be, put your big boy pants on and not let your feelings get hurt. I mean, Jalen Hurts has been the best player on the field in 2 Super Bowls. One the Eagles should have won, and one for which he was the MVP when they absolutely blew out the Chiefs. He doesn't look like a lot of the top quarterbacks in the league. He doesn't make some of the throws that teams want him to make. But my God, how do you argue with the success he's had? Dak Prescott gets no heat whatsoever, despite the fact that he's had a ton of talent on his roster for taking Dallas nowhere. Everybody sings his praises on Dak. Meanwhile, Jalen Hurts, with comparable talent, has gotten to 2 Super Bowls. So I don't get it, man. I just don't understand.
Okay, so who do you think, in terms of this friction, who was at fault? Because I look at Jalen Hurts and they might say, well, he's not coachable or he has beef with the guy's had a different coordinator every single year since he was drafted.
Yep.
Now, sometimes Kellen Moore gets promoted and is now the head coach of the Saints. You can't really control that. But you look at last season, it was a one and done with a coordinator. And now Jalen Hurts has to learn a new offensive scheme and get used to a new offensive coordinator again. And that does matter. Or is it more that Jalen Hurts is just like carrying this beef with him for whatever reason? Who do you think's at fault, coach?
I mean, I'm sure that there's all the above in this equation. I'm sure everybody owns a piece of this. But you brought up the coordinators. The 2 seasons that Hurts had really good coordinators, Shane Steichen and Kellen Moore, They went to the Super Bowl. Then they saddled him after both those guys left to take head coaching jobs. They saddled Jalen Hurts with first-year coordinators, guys who had never coordinated in the NFL. And that's when all the problems ensued. Nobody was complaining about Jalen Hurts when Steichen and Moore were there, but put him under these first-year guys, Brian Johnson and Kevin Patullo, and now suddenly it's a disaster. Well, there's a common thread. Give him a competent coordinator. So now they have Sean Mannion here in Philly, who has had some success in Minnesota, and it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But again, when Hurts has a competent coordinator, everything's fine. When he doesn't, suddenly it's a disaster.
Maybe this is because I talk with you. I talk with Pez on Pez's picks every week, and you are around the Philly area. He is a Philly fan. I feel like the writing is on the wall, and that if we want to do like the ice is really in for Nick Sirianni. I think that there's a chance that if maybe things don't work out the way that people expect them to this year in Philadelphia, I think he's more of a scapegoat than Hurts, don't you? Would you agree or disagree with that statement?
Well, he's a lot easier to get rid of.
Wait, sure, for sure.
When you consider the money and the difficulty with which you have trying to land your next franchise quarterback. That those calculations, et cetera. It feels like though in Philadelphia, they don't have control over their own house, so to speak, because these leaks are happening constantly. Oh, it's coming from an inside source. That stuff doesn't get out unless people want it to get out. And it happened with AJ Brown, and it's happening now with Hurts, and it's happened with Sirianni. There have been all these reports about, inside the locker room, they're saying this, and the other. Philly's got to do a better job of circling the wagons and getting everybody on the same page to stop all this bad press, because it makes the organization look like they're chaotic.
This has been a tough offseason for Philadelphia. And when you talk about all the rumors and the news and the free agents that leave and who they were able to retain and sign, it's going to be fascinating. You've talked about an AJ Brown trade before the draft. I can see that happening. I think that the odds of Hurts and Brown on the Eagles in 2026 are extremely low. What's your take?
Yeah, I agree. It feels like that relationship is broken. You even get rumors, and again, who knows what's true, but you even get rumors that, well, it goes back to like AJ Brown didn't like that Jalen Hurts was talking to his wife or his girlfriend, whatever it was, like it gets back to that stuff. Like, what are we in high school? So yes, I just feel like that relationship is broken.
Okay. All right, let's leave the Eagles and go to the LA Rams. Puka Nacua has been in the news this offseason for all the wrong reasons, whether it's saying, some very controversial things on podcasts, to most recently being accused of biting a woman and having very odd behavior. Regardless, the Rams and Nacua's representation said that he is now in rehab. This is an ugly situation, Coach. Before we even talk about any type of contingency plan, what's your take on the Puka Nacua situation?
I'm always interested in the motivation for things like this. Would Puka Nacua be going to rehab if this woman didn't make these accusations about him, or if this didn't come to light? Is it one of those things where he's really seeking treatment because he feels like he's got to get his life back in order, or did he get busted doing something inappropriate and now he's got to repair his public image by quote unquote going to rehab? It's hard to know those things. If it's the former, you're obviously rooting for him to get right, because it seems as though maybe he's got some issues with alcohol, and that when he drinks, that obviously his behavior is out of bounds. And if it's the latter, and you're just trying to repair your public image, I don't know if that solves anything big picture. It kind of smooths over the situation for the moment, but it doesn't really solve the larger picture.
Yeah, he is one of the most talented receivers in the game when he's right, when he's healthy. I just think that his behavior this offseason, I did see a report, and I want to make sure I say this. I saw a report that he put himself into rehab before any accusations were made or before they were made public. Now, whether those accusations were known to him and he said, I'm going to go to rehab before this hits news, we don't know. But the next question is, do the Rams need to have a contingency plan at wide receiver, in your opinion, just because you don't know how things are going to go with Puka Nacua?
I'll say this. If Mekhi Lemon is there at number 13 when the Rams draft, I'm taking him. One, because I think he's a great fit for Sean McVay's offense. I mean, that's an offense that thrives on boot and movement and using the middle of the field and getting guys the ball so they can run after the catch. And Mekhi Lemon is a great fit for that offense. If you plug him into that offense with Davante Adams and Puka Nacua, my goodness. I mean, how good does that become? But Davante Adams is getting near the end of his career. Puka Nacua right now, while arguably among the best receivers in the NFL, is not somebody I'd say, hey, we're going to be good with him for the next 5 or 6 years. So you got to think a year down the road, right? Adams is probably done. Where's Puka Nacua going to be in his personal and professional life a year from now? If you can land a contingency plan who, if it all works out, simply makes you better, but if it doesn't work out, can step into the lineup, I think that's a smart move.
I agree with what you just said. I think that you have to start looking towards the future. I thought it was very interesting. There were several teams, whether it was general managers, sometimes ownership, definitely head coaches, at the league meetings last week in Phoenix, they were asked about potential trading of players. And instead of saying what we're used to hearing them say, which is, yeah, we're not going to be trading anyone. We like our team. We like our players. Even Sean McVay came out and said that they had talked about a Davante Adams trade, that they were listening to offers. Now, nothing came of it. What was your takeaway when you heard that? And since we're speaking about Rams wide receiver room, do you think Davante Adams could be traded, considering he's at the end of his career? Maybe they can get some draft capital. Maybe they can try and find a way to get him a Mekhi Lemon to round out the room. What's your thoughts on that?
I think a lot of that depends on where they see Matthew Stafford in his career.
Got it.
Because as long as Matthew Stafford continues to play the way he's been playing, he's showing no signs of slowing down. He's going to turn 38 this year. But he's still playing amongst the elite quarterbacks in the NFL. He's a top 5, top 6 QB in the league. Still, as long as he's still playing like that, then I think you want to get everything you possibly can out of Davante Adams. But if you feel like Davante Adams has peaked and we can move him and acquire some draft capital, and maybe, who knows, maybe you got the 13 pick, you move Adams, you get some additional resources. Maybe they could say to themselves, let's go get Carnell Tate. He's the best receiver in the draft. How would Carnell Tate and Puka Nacua together look in LA? Pretty impressive. So I think much of their thought process hinges upon their read on Stafford.
It's also a read on the Puka Nacua situation and saying, if we have any doubts that this guy could potentially be in rehab long-term or could have some type of punishment handed down based on the NFL and their conduct policy, you don't get rid of Davante Adams. Because if you have to miss, let's say he misses 4 games due to suspension, you need him. You need Davante Adams in that experience. You don't want to lean on a Carnell Tate at the beginning of his rookie year to somehow step in. Not that he couldn't, but you just don't want to have that be the contingency plan that we're talking about. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. Let's go to our 5th topic. Give us one team whose actions in the NFL draft coming up at the end of April you'll be following and why.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to give you 2 teams.
Okay.
I'm really interested to see what the Giants do at number 5, because there's a lot of talk about Jeremiah Love, the running back out of Notre Dame, to the Giants. The Giants have 2 good young running backs on the roster already. Cam Skattebo, Tyrone Tracy. Tracy was a 5th round pick, gained over 1,000 yards as a rookie, kind of took a little bit of a backseat to Skattebo last year. Skattebo looked phenomenal, but he suffered that tremendous, that awful lower body leg injury that he's got to come back from. Will John Harbaugh be so enamored with the idea of a feature back, maybe like he had in Derrick Henry, not the same stylistically, but a guy who's going to carry the ball 20, 25 times a game in Jeremiah Love? Because if he doesn't take Jeremiah Love, if the Giants don't take him at number 5, I think that really changes the calculus for a lot of teams in this draft. Because now a lot of teams start saying to themselves, ooh, let's go get him, because he's going to be a feature running back. So that'll be an interesting pivot point, I think, in the draft to see what Harbaugh does at number 5.
All right, so who's your second team?
So real quick, yeah, Kansas City at number 9. I'm very interested to see what they do because you have Patrick Mahomes returning at some point from the injury. They signed Justin Fields as a contingency plan. They've brought in some talent. They need to get better at wide receiver. We mentioned Mekhi Lemon. He's a really interesting prospect for them, but the name I'm looking at for them is Kenyon Sadiq. I'll be very like, do they want to basically say, we had an amazing run with Travis Kelce. Let's get a Travis Kelce-like successor. He's not as big as Kelce, but he's more explosive. And I just think a guy like that needs to have his talent maximized by a play caller who understands the best way to use him. And I think matching up Kenyon Sadiq and Andy Reid would be fascinating.
All right, so I'm going to cheat. I'm going to have 2 teams. And I'm going to cheat because they're both AFC North teams. And no, it's not the Steelers. For anyone that's listening, like, here we go. Cleveland Browns is fascinating to me. Cleveland has 2 first-round draft picks. Remember, they have the 6th overall pick, which is theirs from their 5-12 record, but they also got Jacksonville's pick, which is 24th. They have a ton of team needs. You could talk all along the offensive line. Some have brought up quarterback. I'm not buying that, though. There's a lot of receivers that they might. Carnell Tate has been mocked to them at 6 for a lot of people. I don't know who's going to throw him the football, but still, that's neither here nor there. An organization that consistently gets it wrong, I'm curious what they do. Do they get it right? Do they stay at 6, but also try to maybe trade 24 to gain more draft capital? I just think that Cleveland, and oh my gosh, the new head coach, give me his name. I can't think of it off the top of my head. Todd Monken. There you go. I mean, he just seems to fit in. Did you see the story about him and why he wasn't in the head coach's picture in Phoenix?
No.
Okay, so he was there, and he was there on time, and they're like, coach, like when he's meeting with the media during breakfast, why weren't you in the team photo? He goes, well, I was getting my hair cut for the team photo, and he missed the team. Is there a more Cleveland thing than the head coach getting his hair cut for the photo that he misses the photo? I'm curious to see what Cleveland does. What's your take on what they're going to do at 6, first and foremost?
They really need help up front on the offensive line. Yeah. So I'll be interested. Like if I was Cleveland, I would think about let's say Jeremiah Love slips past the Giants at 5. If I'm the Browns, I'm thinking about entertaining some phone calls. Like you got the Cowboys at number 12. You know Jerry Jones would love to take Jeremiah Love. Love's a Texas guy. Jerry Jones likes stars. You know, that's a big name. He could make a splash. I would think if I were Cleveland, hey, can we move back to number 12? Because if you do that, you're probably still going to get your pick of the best offensive lineman in the draft. I think that big offensive tackle from Miami, I can't pronounce his last name, Francis, whatever. I mean, no disrespect. I just can't pronounce his last name. That'd be a great pick for Cleveland. So yeah, I think they, like you mentioned, they need talent. So gather assets if you can, and pick as many guys in the top 100 as you can, and see if you can develop them.
Hopefully, Todd Monken makes it to the draft war room before they pick number 6. Now, the second team, and this is just out of pure curiosity, Cincinnati has the 10th overall pick. They have been the worst drafting team when it comes to defensive players in at least the past decade. Everyone says, they're paying all this money to T. Higgins. They're paying Jamar Chase. We know they gave the world to Joe Burrow. The offensive line needs work, but their defense is awful. They are atrocious. And so what do you do at 10? Do you take the best offensive lineman and try and protect the assets that are Joe Burrow to give him time to open up holes for Chase Brown, whoever's carrying the ball? Or do you try and buck the trend and go with a defensive player? Last year, Shamar Stewart, I don't even know if he played. If he did, he didn't probably register any statistics. They have been atrocious at drafting defenders. I'm curious what Cincinnati does there. Do they try and take a defender at 10, or do they go to the offensive side and then try to get defense later? Because that's another team that has a lot of holes, coach.
If Caleb Downs is sitting there at number 10, how do they not take him? Yeah, I just don't. I don't know how you pass on him. Al Golden, the DC. Is a guy that likes to disguise fronts and move coverages, and you need a cerebral safety to be able to direct all that traffic. It just feels like that makes too much sense. Then again, these are the Bengals.
Yep.
So Shamar Stewart was a disaster. He held out of training camp last year in a system where the picks are slotted. Like you're not, and the leverage was, or the holdout was over bonus money and how it gets allocated, et cetera. But that's terrible advice from your agent to hold out over a negligible amount of money because of the slotting system. So they need a smart, reliable leader type. Everything you read about Caleb Downs is like he could step onto a pro football field tomorrow and be a team captain by the end of the week. That's just the kind of guy that you read about. I mean, he went to Alabama and Ohio State. You just can't be better prepared for the NFL than that. So if he's there and they pass on him, I think they're a hopeless organization.
Hope they do. Hope they do. All right, let's finish this up with the player profile. You want to talk about Garrett Nussmeier, quarterback LSU. What's your takeaway here?
So the report came out this week that some teams were discouraged by his hand size.
Yes.
And we go back to that old debate, right? Steelers fans remember the famous Kenny Pickett has small hands debate. And then, you get into the conversation. Can you have smaller hands and succeed as a quarterback in the NFL? And everybody likes to bring Drew Brees up as an example of somebody who could. It's interesting to me, how much do you subscribe into the theory that if you're going to play in cold weather, in meaningful games in December and January, you need to be able to grip the football. You need big hands for that. I'll be interested to see where Nussmeier goes, because a lot of people are targeting him as a third round quarterback, but will the small hands debate, do him in?
So I just looked it up while you were talking. Nussmeier's hands are 5/8 of an inch larger than Kenny Pickett's official. That's at the 2022 combine. So hand size, let's look at the measurables. Kenny Pickett's hands were 8.5 inches. Garrett Nussmeier's 9 1/8 of an inch. The Kenny Pickett's taller at 6'3 1/4. Nussmeier 6'2". Kenny Pickett weighed more. Arm length was the same. 30 3/8 for Nussmeier, 30 7/8 for Kenny Pickett. I don't know what do you believe in this hand size stuff?
A little bit. A little bit. I mean, it would not be first on my list of evaluations. Like when I'm going through the checklist, I'm like, oh man, this guy processes really, really well. He's got a great arm. He's got good vision. He's a great leader. Ooh, but his hands are a half an inch smaller than I'm comfortable with. Like I think that's just silly. Yeah. But I do think that if you're choosing between two candidates who you think are even for the most part, and there's just some sort of an intangible that's going to swing the conversation one way or another, then maybe this factors in.
Just to let you know, Joe Burrow had 9-inch hands and Patrick Mahomes 9 1/4. So some good quarterbacks with not so large hands. But this has been a good show, Coach. What's coming up on the Call Sheet podcast?
Yeah. So we're doing our predicting the top 10 of the draft on our Monday morning GM show. And still putting the rest of the week together as we go. But yeah, I think that this is an interesting draft because there's a lot of pivot points. I mentioned one at number 5, where with the Giants, you've mentioned one at number 6 with the Browns. Teams like Dallas maybe trading up. I think it's going to be a really active and I don't want to say chaotic, but interesting, entertaining first round of the draft.
Absolutely. So we'll make sure you check that out wherever you get your podcasts at the Call Sheet Daily with Coach Kevin Smith. But Coach, that's a wrap for this one. We'll talk next week. Take it easy.